Okay, thank you, Tim. Hello, everyone. My name is Mahendra Mahey. I manage projects at the library that Tim's been talking about called British Library Labs. And in a nutshell, what we're trying to do is we're trying to encourage people to experiment with our digital collections. That's what we're trying to do. That's it in a nutshell. And what I'm going to try and do is talk about how we try to facilitate that engagement. One of the ways we do that is through a competition. We have a live competition at the moment which closes on the 30th of April. That's one of the reasons I'm here today. We're on a kind of a road show. We've kind of been around the UK. I think we've got 4 or 5 more dates left. So we're going around flogging the competition. But we're also going to talk about some of the other work that we've done. Labs is definitely more than a competition. What we're trying to do, as Tim's kind of very eloquently put it, we're gently interrogating what the library is for, especially digital content. And what we're trying to do is open that up and make it available for researchers, scholars, developers, artists to do creative things with it. That's the short URL for this presentation. I'll put it at the end as well, because you may not think it's worth it until the end. So I'm just going to talk about how Labs works. First of all, who's the audience? The project is funded by the Andrew Mellon Foundation, and the original proposal very much focused on a digital humanities focus. But as we've discovered as the project proceeded, it's the 3rd year now of the project. It's widened to include other kinds of researchers, software developers, and artists. That was quite a bit of a surprise for us, but I'll show you some of the stuff that artists have done with the content. So what we try to do is we try to get our audience, and they can be anyone, okay, to come up with an idea of something to do with our data. Okay. Also, we try to encourage the audience who have absolutely no idea of what to do with our data to start a dialogue. And what we find is there's lots of coloured light bulbs, by the way, in this presentation. The ideas change once you see the data. Once there's this interaction, the idea changes. And that's something that we found, I think all of you have probably found, research is a very creative process. There's a dynamic interaction with your ideas and the data that you actually get. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to encourage experimentation with your ideas and the data. And we think that this is a dynamic process. There's several ways we try to encourage this experimentation. One is through the competition, which I'm going to talk about. We also have awards. I'll talk about that as well. We run events, hack events, ideas labs, specifically focused on particular collections. We also get involved in funded projects, so we've been involved in a number of AHRC proposals, successful ones. So we want to encourage a dynamic interaction and dialogue with yourselves about working with our content. And oops. Again, I warned you, lots of coloured light bulbs. Once you experiment, the idea might change again, and hopefully that will lead to some kind of output. It can be a scholarly paper, it can be a work of art, it can be some software, whatever the idea sort of determines. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to build bridges to address the gap between the researchers and our data. And as Tim alluded to, sometimes the researchers, especially in digital humanities, may have very good domain knowledge, but not necessarily the technical skills to be able to do things with the data. So what we try to do is, there's me and a guy called Ben Osteen. Some of you may know him. Very talented software developer. And what Ben tries to do is build technical bridges between the data and a researcher's idea. And we also have a number of other resources at the library which we work with you on to get your idea to fruition. I I work on managing the project. I kind of deal with a sort of planning permission behind building the bridge in the first place, working with curators, smoothing relationships, making things built to time, relations to the locals. I just thought I'd bring up this slide. These are the kinds of stakeholders we deal with. That's our main target audience, researchers. And it's, our reach is global. And so, anybody who's interested in working with us, we will work with them. So last year, for example, one of the competition winners was a team of 2 people. They were from Australia. Very challenging in terms of time zones, that one. That kind of summarises our sort of main target audience, universities and wider. But we've done lots of different things with lots of different sectors. But the big sort of pink purple circle, I think that's come out as, is within the British Library. I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but we work with lots of different people within the library. We're based in the Digital Scholarship Department. We deal with the digital content, with curators, developers, technical staff. I'm just going to just talk about this group here, the Access and Reuse group. This is a really, really important group for us because they are an internal committee that deal with opening up content, licensing content, which is absolutely critical to make so researchers can actually use this for their research. So what they do is they have a committee with representatives from various stakeholders within the library. People submit a request saying we want this content to be made available openly. It's considered. Effectively, they're a risk management group. They assess the risk and then they slap a license on it or they don't. Okay? So if your university doesn't do this, it should do that. Well, just a little plug for that. So I'm just going to summarise Professor Hitchcock's. Tim gave a speech at the Lab Symposium last year, and this kind of summarises what we're trying to do, really. What we're trying to do, apart from sort of being a space where we're encouraging new projects to be bench tested, what we're trying to do is understand what the library is for, especially in the digital age, and trying to get the library to understand what real researchers want and how we should be changing our services and our tools to support that. So, how many of you are digital humanists here? Show of hands. Artists? Okay, librarians? Software developers? Okay, good, right. Good to get sort of an idea. What we're finding is, I'm kind of preaching the obvious here, but our focus is very much on digital content, and what happens, magical things start happening when you start doing digital content, because you can do really interesting things with it. You can break it down, you can combine it, you can ask things that you couldn't possibly ask with paper copies. But then I use that as a nice metaphor. That's a sculpture that's been developed from individual words from books and recreated to create something new and amazing. But that's kind of a metaphor for the things that we're trying to do with digital content. This is very much, in terms of our proposal, who our audience are, and it's the digital scholar. And this is somebody that we think employs digital, network, and open approaches to demonstrate their specialism. What we've learned is that our audience is actually even wider, as you will discover. These are the kinds of methods we're encouraging, or where we were expecting that researchers might, methods they might want to use with some of our content. It's just a sort of a snapshot. I won't go through all of these, but things like natural language processing, visualizations, crowdsourcing, text mining, for example. There's a link on this slide to some nice videos from various researchers who've done interesting things in different areas with our content. We'll go to that later. So I'm just going to talk now about our previous competition winners. So we've run 2 competitions so far. and these are the 4 winners. Bob Nicholson, there in that corner, is here today. So he's going to tell you his own personal experiences of working with us and the project that he worked on, the Victorian Mean Machine. I won't tell you more. I'll tell you more about it. This is a guy called Dan Norton, who worked with us in the very first year of the competition. I'll talk a bit more about him. Text-to-image linking tool. These were our Australian researchers. I'll talk a little bit about that. And also Peter Francois. I'll show you a video of Peter, and then we'll talk about his work in a bit more detail a bit later in his presentation. So, Dan Norton was a PhD researcher from Dundee. He was based in Mallorca. So he worked remotely with us for a long time. He was also a resident artist in Barcelona, I remember at the time. Quite challenging working with him. But his PhD was looking at the information processing models that DJs use to process information. And he was particularly interested in remixing digital library content. And his idea was to bring different kinds of content together, not just audio, video, text, images, etc. Bringing it together in some kind of platform, mixing it together and creating new performances out of it. I'm not going to go into too much detail now, but if you follow the links, I'll provide a link to all the slides later. You can see some of his work. He's now working with a computer vision center in Barcelona to build on the very basic prototype that we built with him. That's not the actual final prototype, that was his conception. We worked with projects for about 4 or 5 months. Building that in 4 or 5 months was impossible. Okay, but what we did was we broke it down to its basic building blocks. Dan used that to build on that for future work. Peter Francois, I'm going to show you a quick video of Peter Francois. He's a historian, still a historian, and his idea was the sample generator. His particular research question was, how can I find out more about the travel routes that people took in Europe in the 19th century? I'll give you a little bit of a teaser about Peter now on video, and then Ben will talk a bit more about his idea in his presentation. So this is Peter.
Institute of Cognitive and Evolutionary Anthropology.
Sorry.
I'm Peter Francois. I'm a postdoctoral.
How do I get it on? Just this one.
Research fellow at the Institute of Cognitive and Evolutionary Anthropology at Oxford University. I did a PhD in history looking at Victorian travellers to Europe and Belgium and France in specific. I trained as a traditional historian. I was interested in reading sources and interpreting them and looking up for trends. Afterwards, I moved to the social sciences, where they have a very different approach to data. What I'm currently doing for the British Library is bringing in my background as a 19th century historian with a skill set which focuses much more on humanities as data and thinking very much about the representativity of sources. The British Library Labs invited people to come forward with ideas for a digital tool that we always wanted to be there. So in my case, I felt strongly that I do not want to work with the whole collection. I do want to get access to structured, unbiased samples. And I did not have the right programming skills to work with the metadata from the British Library. But the British Library Labs allowed me to work together with Ben's team who has these skills. The overall aim of the sample generator is not necessarily focusing on the 19th century, but thinking more on how we can connect paper collections with digital collections through the metadata. So its applicability is universal. What I appreciated most was the environment that allowed me to bring people together with very different skill sets. So it was really collaborative work. Now the next challenge is for us to provide users access to it. We're still looking at ways how to integrate it in the workings of the British Library.
I still feel avoid being in that video. So there'll be more about Peter later. This is an idea from last year's competition from Anna Gerber and Desmond Schmidt, and they were trying to solve a specific problem. Digitized manuscript on the left-hand side, transcript on the right-hand side. Could they develop a tool that would link the transcript to the manuscript? People have already kind of done that, but the problem they were trying to solve was the problem of pagination. Okay, when you hover over a word, so they use word recognition, they draw polygons around the words, for example, the corresponding word in the transcript wouldn't always appear necessarily in the same plane. It would sometimes appear down there because of different pagination. So they try to solve this by making the user experience much more pleasurable and usable. And they achieved some of that with working with us. Sorry. Okay, so I can't see the slides on here, so. See what we can do? See it on there, but.
You want to say that?
Yeah, I want to. And I'll probably use this video again. Sorry.
You've got that. So you want to see that?
Yeah. That's fine. Okay. So I'm going to leave Bob to talk about the Victorian meme machine, because he's actually here. There's a little teaser for you. So basically we have two strands. Our competition, which is basically tell us your ideas of what to do with our digital content. So here's our stuff, come up with some ideas. And a new category that we've launched this year is our awards, a bit more like the Oscars. Show us what you've already done with our content, and we'll give you a prize, some money, and a chance to speak about it. So, the competition, it's an international competition. It closes on the 30th of April. As I said, think of an idea, you propose an idea of what to do with our data. And then what we do is we choose two of those ideas, and those researchers, whoever they are, work with us between June and October, to the end of October. We give them a small amount of expenses, and we work with them, we throw all our resources that we can at them. Residence means that you don't actually have to live at the library between June and October, because some of that time I think we probably want to take some holidays. But we work very flexibly with those individuals in terms of how they want to work in the library. They can work remotely, and they can come on site. And then the idea is on November the 2nd, you will then showcase your work and win a prize up to £3,000. Our awards, new category this year, are work that recognises stuff that people have already done with our digital collections. And we've got three categories this year: research, creative use of our content, and entrepreneurship. So we know that people have done things in those categories already, that's why we have those categories. Closing date for that is a bit later, 14th of September. You can nominate as well if people are shy about some of the stuff they've done. We'll shortlist 12th of October, and then the winners will be announced Oscar-style on November the 2nd. And a small prize will be given. So why work with the British Library? We have a lot of stuff, 50 million items. Unfortunately, not all of that's digitised, very small proportion. And I have some of that here today, by the way, and I'll talk a bit more about that. Kudos. One of the things we got from our evaluation of our first phase of the project was that people genuinely wanted to help shape the BL in terms of how we provide support to scholars. leave your own little legacy. You get staff level access to everything that we would get access to. That's the way I've managed to be able to give you access to stuff. So you get staff badge and you get to work with curators, good on your CV, pursue your own interests, and enjoy fishing on a Friday, which is a tradition at the library, but Bob's never experienced that, have you?
I'm telling you about this now. I haven't got this happening. I think she's...
So anyway, tips for the competition. I'm not going to spend time on this now, but on our website we have previous entries on there, so you can see what other people have submitted. So you can see and you can see which ones won and which ones were sort of nominated. So you get an idea of the format. It's kind of good if you can communicate with us. And don't leave it too late, but you can't say that to academics, they always leave it too late. Also, we have some judging criteria. Obviously, you will need to have a research question or an idea. There are technical factors, curatorial, legal factors. Can you get access to the stuff that you want? It's good maybe to ask this. Also, something we don't publish, but I'm giving you the benefit because I'm here today. There are invisible criteria, which is kind of also what's good for the library. What we try to do is focus on things that have wider applicability. So that's something to maybe be a little bit mindful of, and maybe put that in your proposal. You only have 4 months, and it's also the summer holidays. So, be realistic in what you can achieve. Bob will talk a bit more about that. And if you can, look at the data before you submit, and I have brought some of the data today. It is available. You can take it away with you. It's all here. I'll talk a bit more about that in a second. Just to sort of let you know some of the challenges we have at the library. This is digital content, okay? Some of the stuff is in this happy place. It's digital online. Some of it is it's online but behind a paywall. Some of it is only available on site because of licensing restrictions. Some of it is actually only available on a reading room PC, on an individual reading room PC in the library. So there are some kind of challenges, but having staff level access will give you wipe away all that. Okay. Here's just an example of some of the things we have. It's just a very short description of some of the things we have. So we have the UK Web Archive, we have the possibility to text mine electronic journals, book ordering, anonymised reader data. We have 10 years of a community arts radio show called Residence FM. We have lots of environmental sounds, of badgers and foxes. British National Bibliography, about 4 million catalogue records, 19th century books. I'll talk a bit more about that. We actually have over 400 digital collections, and many are not listed. So if there are any that you are interested in that we don't publicly show, contact us, and we can give you some access. We'll tell you a bit more about some of those things. So as I said, we have the British Library in the room. Well, actually, just in that room there. Okay. I've come along with a very heavy box today. Okay. It's called a NAS, Network Area Storage Device. It's available through wireless. It's there's 4 machines out there which are connected to this box. The wireless access point is called Open Data, and the username and password is Open Data. And you can then, I think, a second level authentication called Guest. There's a handout which you can download from here. I'll show a short URL at the end. There's also a printed handout. What's on there, we just have a very small fraction of stuff on there, but we have 3.5 million records from the British National Bibliography. We have 90,000 playbills. These are scanned playbills from 1602 to 1902. This is all public domain. They're not actually accessible on the web at the moment because they're very large. We have Alto XML for the OCR of 65,000 books, which equates to about 22 million pages from most from the 19th century. We have 1 million images snipped from those books, which we put onto Flickr, which we'll talk about a bit more later. We have 70,000 of those images that were tagged by crowdsourcing efforts externally via the community on Flickr. Here's an example. That's a playbill. On the right is the scan. On the left is the scan. On the right is the OCR text. You have a quick look. It's kind of messy and challenging, but there's some details of how to get access to that on your seat. And I haven't got time to go into too much detail there, but I just want to finish off very briefly that Labs is more than just a competition. We will get involved in other projects. So if the competition doesn't, it's not your bag, we do get involved in working on other proposals. Also, on the 20th of June, Midsummer Solstice Eve, we're running an event at the British Library called Crossroads of Curiosity. The British Library meets Burning Man. Okay? Some of you may ask what that's about. Okay, I'll bring a little video about it in a second. We also have been involved in other projects, the mechanical curation and Flickr images. Ben's going to talk about that in a minute. I'm going to just show you very briefly a video. Actually, I haven't got time to show you that video, unfortunately, sorry. Ben will talk a bit more about this, but what I'm going to just say is Ben is going to talk about a little bit more about this. This is an artist who took our images and made 4 illuminated light boxes, 8 foot by 20 foot, which was surrounding the Burning Man at the Burning Man Festival in Nevada. We're bringing that to the British Library, which is going to be installed at the British Library on the 20th of June. There's going to be an unveiling, and they're fantastic. And there'll be a picture of that a little bit later. So I haven't got time to show that video, but that's an interview with the artist. As was mentioned earlier, we want you to explore, play, and grab, and there's a link to my slides. Thank you very much.